The very idea of sailing across a vast, raging ocean on a tiny wooden raft seems crazy. But it is often the craziest ideas that turn the world upside down and give rise to the most important scientific discoveries. After all, the idea of human spaceflight once seemed impossible. In 1947, the outstanding Norwegian traveler Thor Heyerdahl set off across the Pacific Ocean on a Kon Tiki raft with one single goal, to prove the very possibility of such a journey. Thor Heyerdahl was born in 1914 in the Norwegian town of Larvik. His mother Alison worked in an anthropological museum, so he was drawn to anthropology from childhood and was also interested in zoology and Darwin's theory of evolution. Ironically, the future navigator was terribly afraid of water as a child, as he almost drowned twice. But when Thor was 22 years old, he found himself drowning in a river for the third time. He managed to swim out on his own. The wedge, as you know, beat out the wedge. From that moment Heyerdahl was no longer afraid of water. In 1933, Thor entered the University of Oslo at the Faculty of Natural Geography. Soon, through his friend Bjørn Kreppelin, he gained access to a vast collection of material on the history and culture of Polynesia, a sub-region in the Pacific Ocean with over 1,000 islands. Thor literally fell in love with Polynesia and devoted much time to its study. In 1936, Heyerdahl married Liv Thorpe. The couple chose a trip to Tahiti, an island in French Polynesia, as their honeymoon, where they stayed in the home of a local chief and studied survival in the wild. They then spent a year living on the island of Fatu Hiva in complete isolation from civilization. At that time, it was believed that people came to Polynesia exclusively from Southeast Asia. But Heyerdahl formed his own opinion on the subject. Studying the life and culture of the Inca Indians of South America, he developed the theory that the settlement of Polynesia could have come from South America with the help of Pacific currents. The idea that there could have been contacts between South America and Polynesia has caused ridicule in the scientific community. After all, it is known that the South American Indians moved on the water on rafts. Could they pass thousands of kilometers across the ocean? Heyerdahl's attempt to bring his theory to the scientific community led to the fact that one scientist told him directly, "Go ahead, go all the way to Polynesia on a raft." Heyerdahl was encouraged by this. He thought, why not? Gathering a group of like-minded people, he began preparations for this amazing adventure. But, as Thor later noted, he wasn't going to take risks just for the sake of taking risks. His goal was different. I don't seek adventure for the sake of adventure itself. The fullness of life is not necessarily connected with overcoming the elements. The work of thought, the attainment of a humane goal adorn it more powerfully. And the work boiled over. Thor and his colleagues built a raft of lightweight balsa wood without a single nail. The Indians had built similar rafts. In total, the raft consisted of 9 logs, stacked in such a way that this improvised vessel had a tapered bow, as in ships. The logs were tied together with ropes. On the deck, if it could be called so, was installed a mast with a rather high rectangular sail. And in the middle of the raft was equipped with a hut made of banana leaves. It could shelter from the sun or rain. The raft itself was lined with bamboo. The ship was named Kon Tiki. It was chosen for a reason. In Inca mythology, Kon, or Kon Tiki, was the deity of rain and wind. The crew of the raft consisted of only 6 people, including Heyerdahl himself. Thus, there was a navigator, a meteorological engineer, 2 radio operators and a cook, part-time translator. Of course, the main problem was to procure supplies. 6 large men had to eat something for several months, and you can't put much food on a raft. It was decided that they would eat mostly freshly caught fish, as the route was teeming with them. Also on the raft was a supply of fruit, coconuts, and dry rations for the American soldiers. There was still the problem of drinking water. We made do with mixing sea water with fresh water, which was replenished during tropical downpours. In general, the sailing conditions were absolutely Spartan. And that's not to mention other possible dangers besides hunger and thirst. This will be discussed further on. So, everything was ready for the expedition. Kon Tiki set sail on April 28, 1947 from the port of Callao, Peru. For the first 50 miles of the voyage, the crew had help, they were pulled by a Peruvian Navy tugboat. But after reaching the Humboldt Current, the brave adventurers went on their own. In the first days it became clear that the raft was quite stable. The Pacific currents pushed it in the right direction, as Heyerdahl assumed, and for maneuvering they used a stern oar and a primitive rudder. Everyone on the ship was engaged in their own duties: radio communication, meteorological measurements, cooking, keeping the ship's log, and so on. At night a permanent duty was organized, the duty officers were changed every 2 hours. And during the day the main occupation was fishing. Fortunately, there were a lot of fish, so there were no problems with sustenance. Although one can imagine how the seafarers got fed up with fish in the first few weeks. But, although everything went well, it was not an easy voyage. Firstly, Heyerdahl's route lay away from the main shipping lanes of the Pacific Ocean, far from any civilization, so he could only rely on himself. Secondly, sharks posed a danger. Travelers even had to give real fights to these sea predators that came close to the Kon Tiki. Finally, the Pacific Ocean, contrary to its name, is by no means a peaceful and tranquil body of water. Several times travelers were caught in terrible storms. One of them raged for 5 days in a row. Then the raft lost its steering oar and suffered other damages. Fortunately, the raft was repaired and the voyage continued. And so, on August 7, 1947, the intrepid navigators reached their goal. They arrived at Raroya Atoll in Polynesia. However, to get to land, they had to overcome the last test, a coral reef. With difficulty, constantly at risk of capsizing, they passed it with the help of tidal waves. In total, the Kon Tiki voyage lasted 101 days. During this time, travelers covered a huge distance of almost 7,000 kilometers. Thor Heyerdahl's goal was achieved. He scientifically confirmed that South American Indians could reach Polynesia through the ocean. The travelers returned home on a Norwegian ship. But Heyerdahl didn't stop there. Time after time he challenged himself with various challenges and went on unprecedented and risky expeditions. His attempts to cross the Atlantic Ocean on a papyrus boat alone were worth it. Despite all the dangers, the scientist lived a long and fruitful life. Thor Heyerdahl died in 2002 at the age of 87 in the Italian city of Andorra. As for the famous Kon Tiki raft, it was transferred to the Oslo Museum, where it is exhibited along with other items from Heyerdahl's famous expeditions.